Thank you very much. And I think the just ended presentation has hinted on some of the things that I would talk about. Only I was not so fortunate. I was working in a community that I come from. They know me. They brought me up and they knew I was outside the country working. So it was a bit of a challenge for me. So just maybe a few things. I am not an archivist. I have not documented a language. I have documented verbs that exist in my language. And I don't work on an endangered language. In fact, I'm working on the supposedly assumed to be the majority language in Ghana. So I'm sorry if you don't get the vibe, the endangerment vibe. Yeah, and so greetings from my University of Ghana. This project was in 2015 where I was doing my PhD on separation events, and I know that separation is very, very common in agriculture. We all separate different things at different times for different reasons. And so my work was built up on previous studies that had been done sometime in 2007 by a group of scholars from MPI. And so I already had this beautiful video stimuli that I was going to use. So like 50% of my work was done. I decided to do a preliminary, data collection. And so I went to my hometown, which is the area I collect my data. And then I showed a few of the videos to them. And that was where the problem came, because we spent hours talking about why the white lady's hair shouldn't be cut. So I realized that it was a problem, and so following the advice of my supervisor, who said, for this project, I need you to create your own videos that people can relate to, videos that represent us as Ghanaians, as Akan speakers. So it was a difficult task, but I managed to do it. So just for those who are not linguists and have not also read the separation events literature, separation events are just described as those events that lead to a change in the material integrity of an object. So in English, you have verbs like cut, break, slice, and all of those things. So for Asante Twi, the language I'm working on, we have verbs like chabu, break, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing that you notice is that some of the verbs refer to separations that are non-reversible. So if you peeled an orange, you cannot unpeel it, right? Whilst there are some that are reversible. If I open this bottle, I can close it. So some of the separations are also done with the hands, whilst others are done with artifactual instruments, whilst others also occur spontaneously. So if you put something in the freezer, it could just break on its own if it's over freezes. So to investigate these, and as I was tasked to do, I had to come up with video clips that depict various separation events, that could help me elicit the verbs that I needed. And what I tried to do was that I wanted to balance the universality with the locality. So what everybody knows versus what is local to my area of research. And I had to make this comparable. So we had the Bohnemeyer et al. 2001, and then I came up with the 2015. And my aim was to be able to elicit culturally relevant, events. So MPI was 61. I created about 82 small videos. And whilst I was creating the videos, I considered these. I paid attention to the fact that the fruits, vegetables, root tubers, and other foods were culturally familiar to the Akan and to a large extent the Ghanaian context. I also ensured that the objects that underwent the CMB events were different, the actors were varied, different types of instruments were used, and the actions were carried out in different manner. So basically, I'm just going to report on the data methods that I have used in documenting these verbs. on a language, Asante Twi, which is a Kwa language spoken in the Ashanti, is native to people in the Ashanti region and the Eastern region, but it's also very common to find it spoken in different parts of the country. And the methods I used, I had a video-stimuli elicitation, procedural narratives, and textual examples. And each of these data collection type gave me a certain kind of data. So from a methodological point of view, I'm trying to address the issues of ecological validity of the video, things like triangulation, and how data generated by these different methods, how they either converge or they diverge. And I also try to attempt to answer the question, how adequate are the various methods in capturing the culture-specific semantics of verbs? And I'm passionate about this because as linguists, when we go on the field, especially those of us who work on structural items, we are interested in looking for the structures, the meaning, and all of that, but we don't pay attention to the role that culture plays with all of these. So that is one thing. So I did the video stimuli elicitation, made sure that the things depicted separations of local Ghanaian items or African items. So you have the first one being cassava that is being peeled, the second one being plantain that is being peeled, green plantain, and the third one is corn, boiled corn that is being peeled. And each of these, you'll be amazed, elicited interesting verbs that had lots of stories. It got to a time, some of them, I was like, do I really need this? But I had to record all of those stories associated with these verbs. So, of course, they elicited more verbs. So what I was saying about the MPI video, so when I went, I did the preliminary studies, and then I showed the first video, the MPI 27, somebody was cutting hair with scissors, and it brought up a whole debate as to how the hair is being wasted, and so on and so forth. The next time I tried to use like our type of hair, somebody in a barbering shop, and interestingly, it gave me a verb, elicited a verb that, you know, you can relate it to sharpening. So if you have that skin cuts, like that's bald head, there is a name that is related to sharpening, you know, a knife, right? And we had all of those things. I also got the story about widowhood rites and what the women in Ashanti would do when they are going through the widowhood rites. They shave their hair to show that you are actually a widow. And then we looked at the peeling of orange. As you can see, that is an orange, but it's not orange. It's not like the orange that you have here, which is easy to peel. Ours is green. If you are lucky, you get a yellowish green. But so it's difficult to peel with your hands. And so we have an artistic way of peeling it. So the first type is like the round type. You cut it and it gives you this nice chain, that little, yeah, so she knows it, like you could just put it around your neck. And then this type is that one you need to go to school to know how to do it, because it's done in a very fast manner, and the strands that come out of it is likened to the cornrows that you braid. So you can say Sensin or Alata. Alata is the local name, cornrows. And there is a cultural logic behind this that I would have missed if I hadn't done this. And to say something about the orange peeling, Tumblr reports that peeling oranges in Ghana is an art form that deserves its own Olympics. We can determine who peels the fastest and who has the best patterns. The street hawkers are the best at this craft. I can't do this. I have never tried. So that's it. Another video that I contrasted was a video that involved somebody hacking a branch of the tree. And so here we have like a very simple video, just a slash, and I tried to document the felling of a palm tree. If you know the palm tree, it is a very, very complicated tree. For us, it's very complicated because you get a whole lot of things from the palm tree. You get a broom, you get palm oil, you get palm fruit, you get gin, you get palm wine, you get things like little meats and worms that you can eat. So it's very, very complicated. And interestingly, each of these activities related to the palm fruit has a verb on its own. It has a verb on its own, each, from cutting the fruit itself, to removing the individual nuts, to felling it, to distilling the wine. It has a verb on its own. So I did that, and I was able to document the whole palm tree process, plus the palm wine tapping, plus the gin distillation, and that gave me a very good data. So these are very, very common things that you see. There's a coconut seller I called. I was very tired. I needed some coconuts, and I said, "Come here, let's do this." And it's a family member, so this is how they do the coconut, and this is how we open, tin tomatoes. So you can use a tin cutter, or you can just do the easy open. There is a third type that I wasn't really successful at doing, because that one also you need some degree in there to use the knife to do a clean cut. I wasn't successful at that. So in terms of the procedural narratives, I asked people, I worked with farmers, butchers, and they were just to describe the process of either cutting up a chicken for food, preparation of palm wine, and so on and so forth. So what you see there is the palm tree that has already been felled, and there is a ditch that has been dug, and there's a sharp instrument that the farmer is using to cut the surface. Every day he does this thing, and by cutting the surface, it allows the palm wine, fresh palm wine, to seep through, and right under the dug pit, there is a tube that is named after the elephant's trunk. And under that tube, there is a gourd, and the drink pours directly into it. And the farmer does this on a daily basis. And there are interesting verbs that were also gathered from this. So the third set of data that I compiled was mainly from written text. The Account Book of Proverbs, I used Crystallis Dictionary. I also got some from biblical sources. And these, what they did was that they just gave me a range of contexts that these verbs could be used. Of course, whenever it is I gather these sources from written text, I would go back to the people to ask. So one example I got was how we say calculate in our language, and it ties in with the counting discussion we had yesterday. So we break accounts. Okay, so you break account, and I asked, why do you break account? And they say, well, when you are counting your finger, first of all, it's straight. So you start baako, mienu, miensa, and nine, or sometimes it's, so you are breaking the finger to be able to get account. So ubu akonta. And it cuts across quite a number of the Kwa languages. And this has also been explained by Westermann, that in the Epe culture, counting is done by breaking the fingers to show numbers. So these are some of the verbs. The highlighted ones are those that are unique to specific items. Without my videos, I wouldn't have elicited a verb like sign, which is just to make a line on the plantain. And that is the same verb we have to make, like when you have like tribal mark, right? So that's the same verb we have. We have J, which is to individually pluck out the fruits from the palm, already harvested palm fruit. And then we have more verbs for break, pine, which is specifically to cut things from plantain, and so on and so forth. So my point is that we sort of miss out on some of these things when we quickly take what already exists, forgetting that those were used to describe languages from different parts of the world. And when we I mean, it's good we have them, we work with them, but they were opening in the community. How is the community conceptualizing some of these things? That will help us to properly, analyze what it is that we are working on. So yes, it's important to work with materials that may already exist on the language, but it's also important to make sure that as we go on the field, we are showing things that are relevant to the people, things that they can easily relate to and say, oh yeah, this is what is there, and this is how it works. Because at the end of the day, we are not only documenting the language, but we are documenting the language and the culture, which is what we need to do as linguists. So this is basically to give an idea to people as we go about our data collection process. Thank you very much.
So we'll have good time for questions.
Just another example. I liked your talk very much because I did the same thing as you did with theory of language. And in this elicitation questionnaire, you have, for instance, an example, cut a carrot lengthwise with an axe. Yeah. So, yeah. So you have such questions. Yeah. And these questions are formulated by professors of linguistics. Yeah. It's from the Max Planck Institute. Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for your.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I saw that, and the lengthwise, I mean, nobody ever discussed this lengthwise thing in my data, and it was just something. That's it, because length, we are not people of precision. Really, the culture, we are always approximating. So, okay, let's meet 1:30 to 2:30 thereabouts, right? That's how we are. We are not looking at, okay, what's the measurement? How much salt can I put in the food? No, just pick the salt and look at your finger and throw it in. It will work, perfect. So to say cut it in lengthwise, I didn't have any translation. I didn't get any of that lengthwise, nah.
Yeah, okay, just also a little contribution. It's really relevant to have like, how we say, a culturally relevant elicitation, because in Africa, for instance, we have this avoidance culture where we don't want to talk about some parts of the body, like openly. So if you go and then you can't go to an elderly person and say, how do you say, vagina? How do you say penis? How do you say, you like, yeah, no, but you have to elicit these items, and sometimes even you have to look for me, unfortunately for me, during my elicitation, it was like older people in the community. So when I got to that point, it was difficult for me to elicit, so I had to skip it. And then when I saw someone that was like of my age group, it was more appropriate for me to elicit those kind of items. And because we really try to avoid mentioning them, sometimes you would be happy to see that you find different kind of words that expresses those kind of parts. So
thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you very much for your talk. As you mentioned in 2 occasions in your talk, when you elicitate, often many other things come that they're not part of your first project, but they're rather interesting. And did this lead you to other things? What did you do with that? Because apparently you also filmed that.
Yeah. So it was very interesting. I mean, I went in as the linguist looking specifically for something. But then you would sit with a participant, and one of my participants was my grandmother, my late grandmother. She died in April. She was 115. And I would just show her, just ask her, oh, tell me about how farming was in the past, your farm, Then she would be telling me about what she does in the farm. And the next thing you know, she's telling you about some conflicts over the farm and how she wishes that we could fight. I'm like, I don't need that data. You are sitting with her for almost 2 hours and she's just talking in Turkey. So initially, I was tempted to, not pay attention to it. But I think because it was my PhD, came back with comments and all other things. I kept that, and I have now extended the project to look at some other categories. And some of the excess details that they gave, I realized that to be able to properly understand the semantics of these verbs, what they represent to the people, you need to get the cultural knowledge that this woman is spending time, providing to you. It's important. So I've used that in some of my publications, gone back to that data.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. I've also used in my work these field manuals by the MPI, and so there's a place where they are stored. And I know from a couple of colleagues who work on pluractionality and aspect also of verbs, they have in New Guinea, and they have also created video-stimuli. So cut something 3 times versus, I don't know, this kind of thing. Anyway, I've seen their videos, and so I'm just wondering, and this may be a question to the archivists or archivers here, but also to you, is there a place where such alternative or further developed or specialized stimuli can be stored?
That is the challenge. So
that would
since
be-
I did this in 2015, it's just stored, not archived. I learned
Where
that.
it's accessible.
Yes, but I mean, of course, I've shared with colleagues who have documented languages like Sele, and they've used it to collect. We are currently using it to collect data in the northern region and all of that. Thankfully, my department website, has been properly built now, so they are willing to host these videos on their website. So that's the plan. But as of now, it's not stored, it's not archived anywhere. It's archived in my drive. Pardon? Okay, perfect.
Sounds like a bit like forks. You would have something like GitHub with forks.
Perfect.
I think that everybody who's tried to use the MPI stimuli has had this problem. It's just that we don't all solve it as well as you do. I was curious if you just used any of the still picture stimuli and how those went over. They can sometimes be even more difficult for people to understand.
So I just used the still images for the purposes of the presentation because I couldn't really show all the videos. So these are just screenshots from the video. So they were all videos that I showed. I didn't use still images.
Thanks.
Fantastic talk. You had a chart or a table in there that showed transcription and then yes, exactly. That's the gloss. And so if there's so much like semantic limitation or specificity to the word or the lexeme or whatever we want to call it, should that be indicated in the gloss?
Yes, because, so for instance, if I take the verb, the highlighted one, which is roughly translated as to cut by making a mark, this was specifically used to describe the process where the person used a knife to make a mark. When we are peeling plantain, you start by doing this to get the line, and then you use the knife to pry. So this was specifically described. So use a bladed instrument to create a line, right? Then you would see this being used in the process where children, when they are born, are given identification, tribal marks. So you can use a blade to do that. And that's the same verb that you have if, as I was walking, there was a nail somewhere, and then it scratches me. So basically, if you don't pay attention to the specific thing that the verb is, describing, and you see that this one can happen in take a different object that has the same manner of separation, and then this verb is used. So that's why it was important to focus on every micro event that made up the whole activity.
Okay. One other last question. Otherwise, we can thank our speaker and continue to the coffee break.
Hooray.